How big steak was?
Three different.
You mean
3 different kinds of steaks. So, but three.
Your friend?
So big. So 3 pieces of steak, and we divide it. So 3 different parts of the
Your
steak.
friend sent
One sirloin and one. So all kinds of steak.
Okay. By the way, I attained 100,000 gram. No, 100,000 gram steak already. I attained. This is the goal.
100,000 gram
100 kilograms already. We attained.
per year.
Yeah, no, not a year. Maybe 2 years.
100 kilo steak.
For 2 years. Every time I eat 450 gram. lunch.
それ最低、小野さん。You will die. Be careful. That's not good.
Wife 200 gram. I eat
450 gram?
Yeah. Every lunchtime.
You'll be killed.
No, it's okay. Just so I attend 100 kilograms goal. So they're going to give me the special card. This their special card member is about 400, 500. They're going to send me the card, and they give me the 20,000 yen for special bonus, and say they can do something for me.
It's like a platinum,
platinum
card.
Yeah, platinum card. Yeah, 400. Actually, their member is how much member? 6 million.
6 million?
Yeah, 6 million. That
いきなり steak?
is big success. They already see 100 shops.
6 million people eat more than 100 kilos steak?
No. Members. 100 more than 100 kilos member is 500.
You want to be a member, Takai-san?
No, she never joined with me. Kimoto every.
You want to be a member? Ikinari Steak, Uno-san has topped 100 kilogram of steak he ate.
I never been there.
Kimoto every
100
Saturday.
kilogram of steak.
Kimoto will join with me every Saturday.
Terrible.
My wife don't want to go there, but always she think about more form of health. She joined with me.
Yeah, but 450 gram, that's too much.
No, Ikinari steak is light beef, not heavy beef. Like a big restaurant, usually I going to eat 100 gram. It's good enough. But Ikinari steak beef is American beef. American beef is not dense. Do you know that? Dense.
Well, I had Japanese beef today, and it was very, very rich and tender. And
Yeah, but so you guys can eat more than 100 gram. Max 150? No, 200. But Ikinari steak 150, no problem. I can eat it. But no, normal restaurant, okay, you cannot order for
450 gram. How big is that? I ate a night.
No problem. And then after that, every day,
Get sleepy.
I'm going to take my wife to some coffee shop and some ice something. Ice fudge. Then back come to the office. No problem. Every day.
I don't think it's good for you.
No. This every day so familiar with eating steak. And from next week I'm go jogging.
Jogging?
Yeah, lose my weight. Too fat.
Yeah, でもそれはlose weight is okay, but you will not use your stomach from jogging. I did a marathon. でもあんまり you will not lose your stomach.
This is my presentation material.
You did a presentation. How was it? 5:30, 6:30 in the morning?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Daytime. This is I prepared finished. I already written 17 books. And
How much time do you have?
2 hours, but 80 slides. This is Southeast Asia.
Too much.
Not
Too much info, no?
No, this is one book. I'm going to make presentation on Sunday. 87 slide.
Wow.
I revised my book. I republished this book on next Monday. Republish.
Oh, I see.
I just prepared, just finished.
But nobody can read that, the show?
No. This one is maybe can. It's more polite. I just Japanese written in Japanese. Beforehand written in English. So many people cannot read it. I thought Japanese will study democracy in Asia in English. No, nobody read it. But now I read on Japanese 60, 70, 80 pages. And page itself 500, but this is actually almost attached material is English. But this is English material translated to Japanese and summarized here. So this is I'm going to more prepare. So
but
many.
2 hours は絶対足りない。
I have no problem. Just only I just create keyword. It's keyword.
Right. But what are you going to do with the slides then? Because it's so much information.
Yeah, so much information. This is not for seminar. This is for myself. I summarize it.
And who's the audience?
I don't know. This is Kamiya is the name of the person to organize the school. Incredible. He just asked them to join 50 people, but last month 30 people get together. But I can't recognize who are there. I can't recognize who are there. 5 people might be looks like intellectual, but the other people, I don't know why they are attending. But it's just very expensive.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he pay every time he won't pay for me 100,000 Japanese yen. So this is one day I think 3 or 4 speakers.
It's a whole day?
And also the internet connected audience is 200. Online connecting. Yeah, unbelievable. How come so many people get together? I can't do that. But it's Japanese, but last month I was hot fever. Because hot, right?
熱中症
Hot fever? What day?
It's called a zonnesteek オランダ語で It's called a heat stroke.
Heat stroke, right. I just just only my big room, okay, only my location, no cooling facility there, so I just I had a heat stroke.
No cooling facility?
No, not my location.
In your house?
No, that presentation place.
Terrible.
I just I almost lost mine, but 2 hours. But tomorrow I'll bring 5 bottles, water, ice water.
5?
Yeah, because it's so hot.
You will be too hot for carrying 5 bottles of water. That's 10 kilo, the show.
No, smaller. Like this.
Okay.
No problem. So my water, I just.
Tokyo Station.
No, not Tokyo Station. And tomorrow is a little bit far from there.
Sunday
school. It's amazing. How come 50 people get together Sunday? From morning to night? Yeah. But varied by the range of I don't know what kind of people get together. And they pay a lot of money, I think. But even Japanese, but
interesting.
Incredible.
You need to know who they are and why they are not paying money to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they must pay a lot of money. 50 people, 100, 5 speakers, 4 speakers, 5 speakers?
Or 5 speakers. They pay lots of money.
500 yen. 500 mark. 結構するんだよ。
Usually they will not pay kind of much money. August 10 is I'm going to early morning seminar. This is very cheap, free, and I'm going to speak of Japan. I'm going to speak 1 hour, but free. They are lucky. I go military. Several people they wanted to join this seminar.
Military. Friends of Kanai.
No, I don't know. But kind of several people asked me to. I put on Facebook. They wanted to join. But this is very good, deal, free. But they start 6:30 too early.
Yes, 6:30 would be too early for me. Well, Takashi-san is always there, but I'm struggling to get up earlier than 6 o'clock.
Yeah, of course, I'm always get up. Yesterday I wake up 4:30. This morning is not so early. I just 6 o'clock. But 6:30 start means I need to wake up 4:30. Because this is Shinjuku, I need to leave house 5:30.
Shinjuku, you're quickly in Shinjuku then?
No, this from here, Tamachi. Only net time for train 40 minutes. Shibuya is closer, but Shinjuku is 40 minutes. So,
Shinjuku? No,
40 minutes.
I take the train often. Just Yamanote line, isho?
Yamanote line 40 minutes.
No. 絶対かからない。かからない。
40 minutes, sure.
Tamachi.
How you going to see it?
I have a appli. Auto. 40 minutes, right? 新宿じゃない？
新宿。
ニプリ、青とは全然新宿は関係ない。
I'm talking about 田町新宿。青と is tomorrow.
新宿。
Kimoto is now at Dairi Airport now.
It's 22 minutes.
No kidding. Tamachi to?
そう、新宿。
新宿? Are you sure? Oh, so close. I mistake.
Yeah, my office is near Shinjuku, だから I know it there.
Okay.
So you can sleep a bit longer.
Yeah, right. I don't know the location. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, this is you.
All right. Okay, good afternoon. Today is August 4th, 2018. We are joined here from Vietnam and Tokyo. And today we will discuss Western philosophy. Philosophy meaning love of wisdom. We had a look at Pythagoras, a pre-Socratic philosopher who combined an interpretation of the reality through mathematics with a kind of like a beliefs about the how the world functions and the role of the soul, for example. Pre-Socratic. Because it was before Socrates. Socrates was a leading figure in philosophy. He didn't write anything down, but he set a standard because Socrates didn't claim to know anything. Socrates was he believed that to find the truth you need to be able to ask questions, and he had something in common with Confucius, because he was actually he was asking himself, how should we live? That was his main question, and he believed that if you cultivate your soul, you cultivate yourself. So you should reflect upon yourself, not pursue any material wealth, and basically he focused very much on values, morals, and ethics. And his method was something that made him famous throughout history. The Socratic method, a dialogue in which we are engaging in discussion in order to find the truth, not by subjective observations, but by through logical reasoning, by questioning and refuting, and we need to get closer to the truth. His student Plato was so much impressed by Socrates. He believed that he was the wisest man who ever existed, and therefore Socrates always played a major role in his books. He wrote a lot. He wrote down, contrary to Socrates, he wrote down a lot in his books. And Socrates always played a major role in the book as the wise man. Plato was a little bit more than Socrates, obsessed with finding absolute truth. A little bit like Pythagoras, he believed in absolutes, like geometry, and geometry being the shapes that could be found in nature, in small gemstones, as well as in the planets around us. So these shapes were actually the basis, the foundation of all the materials around us. He was not a big fan of what went on the market square. He was not impressed with democracy as it was practiced in Athens, because he observed that actually it was not always the best argument that won the debate. It was not always the best, the wisest man who got support from the crowd. Very often there were other elements in there, and therefore he believed that actually democracy was not a suitable model. He believed that democracy, but only for philosophers, because philosophers were wise people. They were not swayed by emotions, by subjective reasons, by other reasons than the truth, by coming to their conclusions. Therefore, the ruling of the country should be left to philosophers, was Plato's interpretation. Aristotle, who was also a contemporary of Plato, Aristotle actually studied with Plato for a little while, but they went their separate ways. And Aristotle was more of a social scientist. He also looked at what happened on the market square, but different from Plato. He didn't conclude that democracy should be left only to philosophers. He said no, philosophers should learn how to argue and persuade people in a way that it is that is more appealing to the average person. So we should not exclude normal people, we should include them, and we can do that by the art of rhetoric. So that we still use these techniques in order to persuade people. I'm studying public speaking, and the rules of Aristotle are still very much alive today. He also wrote about art. What is the role of art? And art is a way of getting in touch with your emotions that people usually shut off. But actually, art has a healing effect, and therefore art should be subsidized. He also asked the question: okay, what makes people a good people? What makes people happy? And actually, happiness is defined as being a good person, and you can be a good person if you work on your virtues. But these virtues are balanced between vices. That he identified 10 virtues and 22 vices, and it was up to the good person.
What in vices?
Vices are bad qualities.
Bad quality?
Bad qualities. So you have virtues. For example, to be benevolent is a virtue. A vice.
Oh, vice. Okay.
To be jealous or to be or catchy or whatever. So vices. So every virtue balances between two vices. So it's up to every individual to find a good balance and to maximize your virtues. So he was very much a more of an empirical philosopher compared to Plato. But all three, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, laid the foundation of Western philosophy, and thereby also laid the foundation of how we in Western world think and argue and deduct and use empirical observation as well as more higher reasoning to find the truth. But what is always true is that we are rigorous in falsifying ideas and argumentation. So philosophy is aimed at finding the truth, and that is reached through logical steps, logical argumentation. Now we looked at that last week. We made the beginning deduction, induction, and abduction. We looked at the videos, but that was not exactly clear. Undesan asked me if I could come back to abduction. So I found a video that actually explains induction and abduction and how they relate to each other and how they are different. So I suggest that we start with abduction and deduction. One of the speakers in the video is Indian.
We saw it?
No, is Indian. It's not so easy to follow, but let's give it a try.
I'm so sleepy, I drink this.
Repopitan de?
No, this is cheap one.
Repopitan de?
No, this is, yeah. Same.
Let us look at abduction more closely. To understand the similarities and difference between deduction, abduction, and induction, let us look at the relationship between a rule, cause, and effect. Let's consider a simple rule like, if it is cloudy, it rains. So it is cloudy is the cause, it rains is the effect. If it is cloudy, then it rains is the rule.
Another example of a rule would be the rule that Bob hates Joe. So Bob hates Joe, so whenever Joe walks in, Bob leaves. The cause is Joe walking in, the effect is Bob leaving, and the rule is Bob hates Joe.
We've already come across yet another instance of this particular arrangement when we were talking about flu and fever. So the rule might be, if flu, then fever. Flu is the cause, fever is the effect. Now in deduction, in one fundamental kind of inference, we know the rule and the cause, and we need to deduce the effect. So given the rule, if it is cloudy, then it rains. And given the cause, it is cloudy, we can deduce that it rains.
Similarly, in our rule that Bob hates Joe, we can say that if Joe just walked in, we can deduce that Bob will leave.
Or if the rule is, if flu, then fever, and we know that Ashok has flu, then we can deduce that Ashok has fever. This is simply an instance of modus ponens, and we discussed this in detail when we were talking about logic. Now let us look at induction. Given a relationship between a cause and an effect, we can try to induce a rule. For example, if we observe repeatedly that when it is cloudy, it rains, then we may induce a rule. If it is cloudy, then it rains.
Same thing with Bob and Joe. If we observe repeatedly that every time Joe arrives, Bob leaves, we can induce a rule that Bob must hate Joe.
If every time a patient goes to a doctor with flu and the patient has fever, then we can induce a rule, if flu, then fever. In case of abduction, given a rule and an effect, we can abduce a cause. As an example, given the rule, if it is cloudy, then it rains, and the effect that it is raining, we can ask ourselves, is it cloudy?
And once again with Bob and Joe, given our rule that Bob hates Joe, and given that we just arrived at a party and we see that Joe is here but not Bob, we might be able to abduce that Bob left when Joe arrived.
Or given the rule, if flu, then fever, and the fact that Ashok has fever, we might be able to abduce that Ashok has flu. First of all, notice that we are back to diagnosis. Diagnosis is an instance of abduction. But notice several other properties. First, deduction is truth-preserving. If the rule is true and the cause is true, we can always guarantee that the effect is true as well. Induction and abduction are not truth-preserving. We may know something about the relationship between cause and effect for some sample. That does not mean that the same relationship holds for the entire population. Induction does not always guarantee correctness. Same for abduction. We may know the rule and the effect, and we may suppose that the cause is true, but that need not necessarily be true. It may be the case if flu, then fever, and Ashok may have fever, but that does not necessarily mean that Ashok has flu. Fever can be caused by many things. The reason that fever does not necessarily mean that Ashok has flu is because there can be multiple causes for the same effect, multiple hypotheses for the same data. This is exactly the problem that we had encountered earlier when we were talking about what makes diagnosis hard. We said that deduction, induction, and abduction are three of the fundamental forms of inference. We can of course also combine these inferences. Science is a good example. You and I as scientists observe some data about the world. Then we abduce some explanation for it. Having abused that explanation for it, we induce a rule. Having induced a rule, now we can use deduction to predict new data elements. We go and observe some more. Again, we abuse, induce, reduce. And we continue the cycle. Might the cycle also explain significant part of cognition? Is this what you and I do on a daily basis? Abuse, induce, reduce?
Fast for me.
It is fast.
Yeah.
It is fast. Okay, so first deduction.
Deduction.
So they use examples. Deduction. So if it's cloudy, it rains. Today it's raining, therefore it must be cloudy.
It's not to be what? Cloudy.
It must be cloudy. Yeah. Another example, Bob hates Joe. That's the rule.
Just a moment. What deduction, right? It's not rain, not cloudy. Huh?
Deduction. No, deduction. It rains, therefore it must be cloudy.
It's rain. Must be
It rains,
cloudy.
therefore it must be cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Deduction.
Deduction.
Right. So, and I have the flu, therefore I must have a fever.
I must have fever.
Yeah.
Induction.
But the induction you
you said deduction?
so deduction.
Deduction? I
Because
have
flus
flu.
are associated with fever. Right? If you don't have a fever, it's a symptom. Then you don't have flu. So that's deduction. Induction, if you don't, is basically you are going to find a rule. So for example, you very often observe that when it's cloudy, it starts raining. So if it's cloudy, it starts raining. If you increase the price of a product, demand will fall. Right? That's induction. If you, like for example, if you observe that Bob always leaves when Joe enters, you could induct that Bob hates Joe.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
So induction, you try to find a rule, a connection,
Bob
a relation, a cause and effect relationship.
You said Bob hate Joe. Joe?
So for example, another example of a induction where you suspect that this is a bad example, but the first example that comes to mind, that eating too much steak will cause heart problems. So you are going to observe 1,000 people, and you look at the percentage of 500 people who eat a lot of steak and 500 people who don't eat a lot of steak. If you find that the 500 people who eat a lot of steak have more problems with their heart, then you induct that there is a relationship.
Yeah, doctor told me you ate a lot of steak. You're just what is it? CR.
So
there's a lot of cholesterol in your heart.
Oh,
So
that's bad.
It's possibility for
MRI.
heart attack. So this is eat lot of steak is induction. Heart attack capability is very high.
Right.
Induction.
Right, because they observe that people who have a lot
How about the
of
reduction?
deduction,
Reduction.
reduction, abduction. No, we have induction, deduction, and abduction.
Abduction.
Right.
What is abduction?
So, abduction is so. For example, if the rule is if you have a flu, you have a fever, and you observe that you have a fever, you might abduct that you may have a flu. But I could.
What do you mean abduct?
Abduct is that you are looking for the cause and effect, right? So abduct, like for example, you have a heart attack. Then I might abduct that you actually ate too much steak. That caused.
What do you mean abduct?
Abduct means that I'm going to look for the cause to explain the effect. So, but then you might argue, no, because actually it's not because of steak, it's because my family has problems with their hearts, so it is not related to me eating too much steak. It's because it's of something that runs in the family. So, for example, detectives, they use this technique a lot.
Detective,
yeah. So usually they look for motive, right? If there is a murder.
it's murder.
If there is a murder, then usually what they do, they're going to look for the people who have a motive to kill this person. Right? Who has a reason to kill this person? So, for example, if somebody gets killed, is a rich person, they might first look at this person's wife because she might get life insurance or something like that, or somebody else who might benefit from it. So they look for motive. Then they are going to say, okay,
Abduction.
So that's induction. So induction is. The wife is to benefit from his death.
It's induction.
Therefore, she may be the murderer. But then you're going to abduct that and say, well, the cause is that actually she killed him, but she claims that she has an alibi because she was not in Japan at the time you were murdered. Then the other person might claim, well, you might not be in Japan, but that does not totally free you because Another cause could be that you hired a hitman to actually kill you. So could be possible. So through abduction, you're going to find different causes that actually could support your rule is that somebody needs a motive in order to kill somebody. So abduction is the process of finding who did it. So you're going to basically, if a detective is going to look for who did it, they're going to look for motive. So they're going to say this is a possible suspect, this is a suspect, this is a suspect, and then they're going to falsify and verify through abduction to find the real cause.
You said falsify the estimate.
Sorry?
Falsify. You said estimate.
Falsify. Estimate. No, falsify means to reject the hypothesis.
Reject hypothesis?
Yes. So, but if you, for example, if I would be a detective and I have a murder case, Uno-san, you died by a gunshot. So I can already deduct that you were not killed by a heart attack, right? But then I think, then I'm going to think, so you're killed by a gunshot. So who would be capable of killing you?
Killer.
Yeah, who could be the killer? Who was to benefit from your death? Well, maybe somebody who has benefit from your life insurance. Mazuso. You bought 3 bags.
No, they put in one bag. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
No, one more.
So we're going to look for motive. Now let's say that the person who has the strongest motive is your wife. Let's say. Let's just argue. It's just so basically we're going to because if you would go to court and say, well, he was not killed by a heart attack but by a gunshot. Now the only person who was to benefit from that was your wife. Therefore, she should be put to prison. Then any good lawyer would get her off the hook because you have no proof. So you need to prove that she did it. No, thank you. You need to prove that she did it. It's burned. Why is that?
This is good. I used the fry pan.
It gets better? Smoky. Oh, it's pretty good.
Well, no, I used it.
So abduction is the process of to looking at possible causes that resulted in your death in order to find the truth. So you know the game Cluedo? You have it in Japan or no?
What?
Cluedo. Cluedo is a game, a board game where you need to, through logical reasoning, through abduction steps, you need to find who did it, with what weapon, and where. That's a game. Maybe you don't have it in Japan. It's famous in Europe.
I don't know that one.
It's a game of logical thinking, of abducting and coming to conclusions. It's a bit like the other game that is actually from Japan, with numbers. What's that? What's that? You play it in a kind of a matrix. What's that game? You need to fill out numbers. It's from 0 to from 1 to 9. And what's that game? It's very, very popular. Everybody played it. So you need to fill out numbers, but actually use the theory, the technique of abduction in order to fill out that matrix. You know what I mean, Takai-san?
Is it word or figure?
Sorry?
To search for some words.
Yeah, no, that's a crossword. It looks like a crossword, but it's only with numbers.
Numbers.
Yeah.
I know, but I don't know.
Yeah. So what is that? But basically, you use the technique of abduction to solve the puzzle. What is it? Maar dit kon niet.
No
Okay,
crosswords.
Moving on.
No crossword. It's it's a different kind of technique. So basically, induction is to, through observation, find a cause and effect. Find a rule, and that's induction. Deduction is actually coming to a very fundamental conclusion. Deduction, in order for it to be meaningful, you need to have some irrefutable fact. So, for example, last week we discussed an example of deduction. All men are mortal, which is a fact. All men are mortal. Everybody dies eventually. Then Socrates is a human, so we can deduct that Socrates must be mortal. That is a deduction. But an induction could be that eating too much steak will cause heart problems. That is not through logics, but through observation, empirical observation. But then we could abduct that induction. So if we eat a lot of steak can cause heart problems, we can actually abduct that and say, well, that may be so, but if we eat a lot of steak and at the same time work out a lot, then these heart problems may not occur. Or if we, if we drink this tea together with while eating a lot of steak, we will not have heart problems. Then we can abduct the induction. And we use these techniques in order to come closer to the truth, closer to reality. So these techniques are very often used by Westerners in order to substantiate their argument, in order to make an argument. So it's a good idea for Japanese people to be aware of these techniques and master them in order to be able to more effectively communicate with Westerners. Does that explain abduction, induction, and deduction for you? Okay. Takashi-san, okay?
Maybe he is not okay. You have better more to explain, because he just skipped last session. So he didn't see the video.
No, he was there on Monday, right?
Yeah, it was Monday.
Monday, but no video.
I'm okay.
Okay. Monday was no video.
Was supported by this video.
Okay. All right. So this video is a bit quick. There were two other videos before that were much longer, but I think it kind of illustrates the point. If you're clear about this, then I don't think you need the other videos. Let's. Okay, so induction, abduction. Let's look at Cartesian skepticism. Cartesian skepticism is an example. We looked at it here. Is an example of epistemology in philosophy, and is the world, my experience, really what I think it is? What is true? How can we find the truth? How do I know I'm right or I'm wrong? Can I ever be certain of anything? That is not philosophy that is practiced through observation. This is philosophy that completely takes place inside the head of the philosopher. And why is it important? Because that basically, through reasoning, we can find the essence of things. So it's different from, for example, what Aristotle did. It's different from... I don't think that was caused by steak. Maybe a peanut got stuck in the wrong pipe.
Okay.
Okay. Did we already see the card, maybe? We already saw the card, no?
Which one?
Descartes.
Yeah.
We saw it, right? Let's skip it.
Crash Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace. Share your passion with the world. A film for your philosophical consideration.
So the Matrix. There was a movie about the Matrix, about reality and what is real and what is not real. Did we discuss that, Takai-san? Were you there?
On which one?
René Descartes. René Descartes argued, I think, therefore I am.
I
No,
didn't.
he didn't. No, he didn't. We did.
Okay. Now maybe then this is a very interesting video. It's not too long. It is a basically what Descartes was questioning is basically what I think every person sometimes questions. Okay, is what I observe around me, does that really exist, and does it exist objectively, or is it very subjective? Like, for example, Uno-san's shirt is red, or it has a Mickey Mouse on it, right? We all agree that it has a Mickey Mouse on it, but is the Mickey Mouse that I see, is that the same Mickey Mouse as you see, or are we only agreeing that it is Mickey Mouse because through definition, but maybe the Mickey Mouse that you are seeing is a completely different shape and form than the one that I'm observing? So is it that we cannot say that we necessarily see the same thing? Now that can be with a lot of things that we can question a lot. Okay, what is real? What is the reality? Maybe you remember Plato's cave with the prisoners who were born inside of a cave and never saw anything but the wall of the cave. And on the wall they saw shadows, and they believed that the shadows were the reality because they simply never were outside of the cave. Uno-san always mentions the frogs in the well when he's talking about Japanese culture.
What is this?
When we're talking, for example, about Nikkei News and
you mean frog in the well?
Frog in the well. So basically, a frog in the well believes that the world is inside the well, but the reality could be that there is a very big world outside the well. We simply are not aware of it. So Descartes wanted to know what things we can be really certain of. What things do we know as a fact? And once we know that, he wanted to rebuild the world based on what we are certain of. What other things can we be certain of? So from that certainty, you could deduce other certainties. So he asked himself the fundamental question: what do we know for sure? Okay.
Yeah, you gotta be questioned if you're crazy sometimes.
Right.
This is what it was the questions in secondary school. I just asked my friend, the red color I saw is the same color you saw saying red.
Right. Is
so
it?
I was asking you crazy.
No, but yeah, so these are kind of questions that you can think about that and really be obsessed about it. You can think, well, we don't know, but let's be happy and have an ice cream or something. So philosophers, they make their job out of actually thinking about these kind of questions. And thereby deriving what is real and what is not. All right, Descartes, French philosopher.
Crash Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace, share your passion with the world.
A film for your philosophical consideration. The Matrix. You gotta remember the humans floating around in the vats of KY jelly, tubes and wires keeping them alive, stimulating their brains to make them believe that they were experiencing the real world, the world we all think we know. Well, almost 20-year-old spoiler alert here, some of them come out and find that the real world was a desolate wasteland and the lives everyone thought they were living were just fabrications fed into their brains. A select few were rescued from the illusion, but some of them were so unhappy in the real world that they chose to return to the illusion. But Neo, and the others who chose to stay and fight, were the philosophical heroes of the movie, choosing truth at the cost of comfort and happiness. After watching The Matrix, you might have found yourself wondering, could this be true? Could we possibly be stuck in a dream world of someone else's making with no way to tell that our reality isn't real at all? If so, you are not the first person to have wondered about these things. In fact, the original Neo, the guy who really went into battle against the matrix of illusion in order to defend the truth, he was a 17th century mathematician named Rene. Last time we talked about Plato and his belief that the ordinary reality of the material world is only a shadowy approximation of ultimate reality. Socrates, meanwhile, who was widely believed to be the wisest man in Athens, fretted about how little he knew. Philosophers spend a lot of time obsessing about knowledge, wishing they knew more, and worrying that they're wrong about what they think they know. They even, if you remember from the first episode, have a fancy name for the study of knowledge: epistemology. The philosopher who gets the gold star for taking this how do I know what I know paranoia to astonishing levels is the early modern philosopher, scientist, and mathematician René Descartes. When you watch The Matrix, you should congratulate the Wachowskis for giving us such a great sci-fi adventure story. But you should also remember that the archetype of the story actually has its roots all the way back in the writings of Descartes in the early 1600s. For a story like The Matrix to get off the ground, the audience has to be willing to entertain some level of skepticism. And a skeptic is someone who questions whether it's possible to know anything with certainty. And Descartes was the Mac Daddy of all skeptics. He was so skeptical we named a form of skepticism after him, Cartesian skepticism. Why was Descartes so skeptical? Well, he realized that many of the beliefs he used to hold were actually false. We all go through this. It's part of what we call growing up, learning those horrible truths about Santa and the Tooth Fairy. That you can't actually buy everything you want and need for just $100. That your parents don't really have all the answers. But realizing that he used to believe things that were false really got Descartes to thinking, because when he believed those things, he didn't realize they were false. So what if some of the things he still believed were also false and he just hadn't realized it yet? How could he know that his beliefs were true? Well, after a bit of a freak out, Descartes realized that the only way to make sure he wasn't holding any false beliefs was to disbelieve everything, at least temporarily. He offered this as an analogy. Imagine you have a basket of apples, and you're concerned that some of the apples might be rotten. Since the rot could spread and ruin the fresh apples, the only way to make sure there's no rot in the basket is to dump out all the fruit, inspect each apple in turn, and return only the fresh apples to the basket. Knowing that just like rotten fruit, a rotten idea can spread and infect all the ideas around it, Descartes upended the apple basket of his beliefs and decided to start from scratch. If he examined each possible belief carefully and only accepted those about which there could be no doubt, then he'd know he was only believing true things. So Descartes began the arduous task of examining his beliefs one by one. He started with empirical beliefs, things we come to know directly through the use of our senses. And many of us think that our senses are the most reliable source of information. If I can see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, smell it, I must know it, right? Not so much. Descartes pointed out that our senses fail us all the time. You rush to catch up to a friend and realize as she turns around that your eyes played some tricks on you and you've just tapped on the shoulder of a perfect stranger. Food tastes wrong when you're sick. Drink too much and you feel like the room is spinning. Water that's room temperature feels hot when you come inside after playing in the snow. The list goes on. You can probably think of countless times where your senses gave you faulty information. And once you realize that, how can you ever trust your senses again? And for Descartes, disbeliever of everything, it got worse. Have you ever had a dream so vivid you thought you were awake? You've probably had that dream when you were dreaming, or you dreamed that you woke up from a dream, but in fact were still in the dream. Not everyone has had these experiences, but many of us have, and given that we don't always know that we're dreaming while it's happening, how do we know we're not dreaming right now? Maybe you just think you're watching Crash Course, but in fact you're cozied up in bed, dreaming about me. Which, hey, like, who could blame you? But really, when you think about it, can you be sure that it's not the case? You might be thinking, okay, sure, I probably deceive myself from time to time without knowing I'm doing it, but dreams end, and when I wake up, I realize that what I thought I was experiencing was all in my head. And the same is true for when my senses let me down. Those are just temporary instances isolated to a particular situation. As soon as the situation changes, I can realize that my experience was false. This quality, the ability to check in with yourself and figure out that you're experiencing a deception, describes what Descartes called local doubts. Those are doubts about a particular sense experience or some other occurrence at a particular point in time. Step out of that point and you can check to determine if you've been deceived. But what if everything is a deception? What if everyone is experiencing the same false reality from birth until death? What if nothing is as it seems, just like in the Matrix? This type of doubt, the kind you can't step out of and thus can't check, is called global doubt, and it's the subject of this week's Flash Philosophy. Let's go to the thought bubble. Philosopher Bertrand Russell illustrated the concept of global doubt with this troubling thought. What if the universe was created just 5 minutes ago? In this scenario, known as the 5-minute hypothesis, the creator of the universe could have designed many elements of the world to make them appear pre-worn, so as to seem old. From dinosaur bones fashioned by the creator and planted for us to find, to that scar on your knee put there by the creator along with the preloaded false memory of how you got it. It seems crazy, but there's no way to prove that it isn't the case. The question for Russell was, does it matter? Descartes thought it did, but as a good Catholic, he couldn't fathom a world in which God would plant globally false beliefs in all of our minds. So instead, he posited the existence of an evil genius whose purpose in life was to deceive us, and who was clever enough to do it. Descartes didn't actually think such a being was likely to exist, but he realized there was no way to rule out his existence, and as long as the evil genius was possible, he worried that we were all stuck. Stuck in a radical skepticism in which we really can't trust any of our beliefs. Everything we believe, every sense experience, every thought, they could all have been put in our minds by the evil genius who created an illusory world so seamless we'd have no way of detecting the illusion, just like the machines created for the characters in the Matrix. Descartes was at the point of despair, but then he realized something. He had cause to doubt everything. Everything except the fact that he was doubting. He knew he was doubting. He could be sure of that. And if he was doubting, then he must exist, at least as a thinking thing. After all, a doubt is a thought, and if there is a thought, there must be a thinker having those thoughts. So Descartes decided that he couldn't know that he had a body. What he believed to be his body could have been part of the evil genius's deception, but he must have a mind, or he couldn't be having these thoughts. This was Descartes' aha moment. In his book, Meditations on First Philosophy, he declared, "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore I am. It's one of the most famous realizations in philosophy. I cannot doubt my own existence. I can doubt everything else, but I can't doubt that I am, bare minimum, a mind having thoughts. This was Descartes' foundational belief, the first belief he put back in his apple basket. And from there, he figured he could build back up to more certain beliefs. Once he was certain that he was a thinking thing, he began examining his thoughts. And one of his most clear thoughts, what he called a clear and distinct idea, was that God exists. He gave an argument for this, which we're going to examine in a later episode. But for now, take my word for it, it's got some problems. And from there, he considered his beliefs about the physical world and concluded that it, too, actually exists. Ultimately, he determined God wouldn't allow him to have clear and distinct ideas that were false without some way to detect his own error. So he concluded the evil genius is not actually fabricating lies that consume our every waking moment. Descartes managed to reason from cogito all the way back up to having basically all the beliefs he started with back in his his apple basket, which is the story of how René Descartes, with the power of skepticism, defeated the threat of the evil genius. Much like how Neo ultimately short-circuited the Matrix, though considerably less impressive to watch, I imagine. He found certainty through his discovery of the one belief that he simply couldn't doubt, his own existence as a thinking thing. But there is a lot of debate among philosophers as to whether Descartes actually manages to justifiably believe anything other than that he exists as a thinking thing. And we'll talk more about that next time. This episode of Crash Course Philosophy is made possible by Squarespace. Squarespace is a way to create a website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas.
わかった?
Evil genius.
Evil genius. So.
What the?
Urusan is now taking out a hammer and starts to hammer his own back. The evil genius is putting global doubt into our minds. He deceives us. So basically, what Russell is actually saying, okay, what if God created the world 5 minutes ago? So what we see today, like dinosaur bones and scars on our body, is actually not part of our history. It is actually put there by God to deceive us. Descartes, living in the 17th century, he could not question God. That was not a very healthy hobby to do at the time. So instead of blaming God, he kind of blamed the devil or the evil genius. That if there was, he did not really believe that there was one, but he said, well, we cannot rule out the possibility that the evil genius is playing tricks on us. So he could not actually rule out the possibility that what we saw was just a collective image that was created by the evil genius and was not actually the truth, that we are all being deceived by the evil genius. There's another movie that I think of. It's the movie about a guy who stars in he lives his normal life, but actually his whole life is staged. It's not real.
I saw it.
Yeah, it's a comedian. It's a famous American comedian. He was actually born in that movie, and he grows up, but everybody, including his parents, are actors.
Yeah.
And he then suddenly realizes that his entire life is not true, so that he has been manipulated by evil genius. I don't remember what the name of the movie is, but it's the same idea as the Matrix. Implementation is different. So basically, he discovers that everything he believed to be true is actually not true.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but when he realized that, so if there is a possibility, we cannot exclude logically, like deduct in a deductive way. We cannot exclude. We cannot rule out the existence of the evil genius or the existence of God playing tricks on us. Therefore, we cannot be certain about anything that we observe. So he realized that basically everything around us gives us reason to doubt. But he also realized that there's one thing that I can be certain of, is that I doubt. I doubt. Therefore, I think. So he knew that thoughts existed, and he knew that thoughts needed to come from somewhere. So he knew that he existed because he had thoughts. Because he had thoughts, he had doubts. So I think therefore I am was the basic, the fundamental pillar under his entire world, that he existed. So that is epistemology.
But what this mean?
What it means is that he had a fundamentally deductive. He found a truth that we can question everything, but one thing we can be certain of is that if I think I exist.
What this mean?
It means that if I exist, God exists. If God exists, then the world exists. And basically, he kind of built. This was the stepping stone on which he rebuilt the world as a whole. So all the skepticism that he had, and all the questions that he had about the world, this could be because of this and that. He goes back and back and back and back and back and back to the absolute essence that there is something that he can be sure of, that he exists. And if he exists, then also he knows other people exist. It's the same. It's the same question as Nishida. Nishida, who asks the question, does the moon in the sky exist, or does it only exist through me? He exists that the moon, the subject and object are the same. So he exists. He claims that the beautiful moon in the sky only exists through me, through its observer. So it's one. Basically, if I would bring this further, I would say, I am God. Okay, sure. That's what he says.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
Takashi-san, do you agree?
I don't understand.
Yeah, it's possible.
Right.
It's possible that I could say I'm God.
Yeah, so that is the logical conclusion. If the moon exists through me, then basically I am God. That's why you need to. That's why Zen Buddhism ultimately is about finding yourself, because that's the same as finding God. So Zen Buddhism is the same if we replace me with God. No. Well, if Nishida's question is, does the moon exist? Does anything exist? So the beautiful moon that I see when I walk at night and I see the beautiful moon, is that moon actually real? Just like, or is it just a? Does it not really exist? He says, well. Just like Descartes, we cannot know for sure that the moon exists, but Descartes says, okay, je pense donc j'existe, but in Nishida concludes that at least the beautiful moon exists through me because I observe it. For that I can be sure. I see that moon. Therefore, the moon exists in me. I become one with the moon. If that is true, then my conclusion is that what he's actually saying is that he is God. No, I am God. I am one with the world around me. The world around me exists through me. So I am the world. Therefore, I am God. If that is true, then Zen Buddhism is about finding yourself. That's the same as finding God. No?
No, I don't.
No?
No,
I must say I did not really read this part, but I think it logically follows.
Descartes said,
I think, therefore I am.
I'm thinking, that's the reason why I am.
I have thoughts, therefore I exist.
What is the benefit for the philosophy?
Well, that was the only thing that he could prove to be true. That he exists. Not his body exists, but his thoughts exist. And there must be something of an identity that holds these thoughts. These thoughts cannot exist in nothingness. These thoughts need to be held and be put into me. What that me is, we don't know for sure. But there is an I, and however it manifests itself, there is someone who has thoughts. Therefore I exist. So that's the only thing that he knew for certain. So he goes on to argue then, if I exist, God exists, and so on. So he rebuilds the world based on the things that are irrefutable. So he tries to deduce everything, not induce, deduce everything based on the premise that he exists.
Deduce.
So, are you sure it's a good idea to hit yourself with a hammer?
It's stiff.
So,
So possibly, the possible takeaway is to doubt something, to avoid ourselves from making something given by someone is true. There's no reason believing in something given by someone.
No, because we cannot prove it. We cannot prove that it's a figment of our imagination. There are many. There are many ways that even like the example that he gives, like the bones of the dinosaurs could be planted there by the evil spirit or the evil genius. What was it? Yeah, the evil genius could have put there to give us the impression that we actually have a history, but in reality, we only exist for 5 minutes. So that is, and it could be. It's likely that it's not true, the evil genius, but we cannot prove that it is untrue. Therefore, we cannot. We have to doubt the world around us, because the world around us could be planted there, could be made up by the evil genius, just like the movie from Jim Carrey is the name of the actor. And what is the name of the movie?
Jim Carrey. Yeah, Jim Carrey.
Yeah, what was the name of that movie? I don't remember. Jim Carrey.
No, yes.
Truman Show.
Truman Show.
Yeah, that's it. Truman Show. So the Truman Show is an example of somebody who realizes that the entire world around us, that he never questions, of course, actually does not exist. That there is a completely different reality out there. So basically, what Descartes says, that we cannot be sure whether we are living in the Truman Show or whether we are living in the real world, that the world is actually real. We can't be sure. It's unlikely, but we can't be sure. So ultimately, what can we be sure of? Is everything doubt? Or is anything true? And then he finds, okay, well, there's one thing that I can be sure of, and that is that I doubt. I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am. That is a deduction. can you buy milk for that for that theory? I don't know, but basically through his line of reasoning and deduction, and he actually creates a world of which we can be certain of.
Yeah, I think I understood the concept. Right. So in this way, everything is something that can be dealt with.
Yes.
And okay, we watch out in some movie at the stage. Then finally I find there is a exit from this world.
Right.
But absolute the skepticism, then it might be also another world where we watch out. So some stage outside, including this situation that I found, there is exit.
Right.
And
a double bottom.
So this is a matrix, right?
Right. So parallel universes and yeah. So basically, we need to be skeptical of anything. We cannot take things at face value because they could be different from what we think it is. And that is actually, I mean, this is a very, very abstract theory, but are we not always every day busy in figuring out what the world looks like, what the world looks like in your mind, but also in the minds of others if we are doing business or if we are engaging with people in friendship relationships. In order to understand each other, we make assumptions that they see the world as we do, but their viewpoint might be completely different. So what does their world look like, and what does my world look like, and how is my world shaped through my experiences and through my upbringing and through my culture? That gives a completely different reality than from the one from my counterpart. So in order to do business, you need to be able to not only understand the other person's reality, but also your own reality. So asking yourself questions, who am I, is a very fruitful exercise because it helps you to create awareness, understanding, and thereby be able to find common ground with your counterpart and do effective business. So it's not only an impractical exercise and esoteric questioning. There's actually, I think there is more to it, and it's just an exercise that everybody should do and always question themselves. Okay, is what I know, is what I believe, actually the reality, or is that just are they just indeed nothing more than beliefs? But everybody feels that based on their what they experience, what the world looks like, is the same for everyone. It's the same as we observe it. Now, I'm sure that the world will look completely different if you are born in Syria in the year 2010, or if you're born in Japan. Your perception of reality is so completely different.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we might be able to find the new one to make the new rule, which causes new cause and effect. So with the same reality, or the same reality observed in the commonly accepted theory. If with this skepticism, and we might able to doubt if this common theory is really true, then only through this the idea of doubting something which has been accepted we can have something new.
So
as Uno-san is, this is I think what Uno-san is doing. For example, the Confucianism scholar is always saying this is the way of understanding the sense of what Confucius is saying. But his way is also always doubting, is it true? And it might be the truth might be different.
So to give you an example, I actually became aware of myself and the way that I think after being in Japan for quite a long time. Because my fundamental beliefs in how things work and how things should be, and how you persuade somebody and how you reason through your argumentation and how you use deduction, induction, abduction to persuade other people was questioned, but it was never questioned in the Netherlands. It was only questioned and became like people were looking at me like, I can follow your reasoning, but I still don't believe you're right. What do you mean I don't believe you're right? That's, if you can follow my reasoning and my reasoning is correct, then I'm right. No, that's not necessarily true. And so I came to realize, like, maybe there is a different way of being right and being wrong, and these concepts maybe not even existent. Another thing that what we tend to do, and we, as I'm talking people from Western cultures, we tend to make models in order to find the truth, what is, right? So conceptualize the reality and simplify it in a way that we can agree on its working. So we make a model, okay, then like for example economic models describe the economy in a way that we are spending our money. So we consume it, we invest it, we use government spending, we take taxes, and if we want to measure GDP, we need to put these things together, and then we can describe what the economy is doing in a single monetary value. That is a model. That is a very, very gross simplification, strong simplification, but that gives us like if we can agree on that, then we can use logic and argue our way into being right or being wrong and implementing policies accordingly. So we need these models in order to be right and wrong. Now, if you are not prepared to create models, how can I know what's right and wrong? Well, that's the case we discussed last Monday, I think, about that where holistic thinkers, they do not make abstract concepts of the world, but they are trying to understand the world by looking at it from all angles and directions over and over again, not necessarily in a chronological order, but just trying to fathom the depth of the reality by asking questions. So that's a different approach. Both try to find the reality. The methods are different.
So, Uno-san, do you think if there's anything, what is globalist the concept in Confucianism of where we can doubt anything, not putting in some fixed condition.
We can doubt it. Sorry, I don't understand the question, Takai-san.
Any similar concept in Confucianism?
Okay.
Yeah, it seems there might be something similar.
What do you think, Uno-san? Is there doubt about reality and in Confucianism?
I don't understand what Takashi means. Doubt and reality?
So when we are talking about these kinds of questions about what is real and
still I'm worrying about that. Why Descartes was so famous and influenced many people? What is the point? He influenced a lot of people.
Right.
But why his doubt and what point? And he's talking about reality and mental attitude is the same or not. So discussion he did. What is it?
So why does it matter?
Yeah, why he's so much influence to the other people? Not why?
So why does Descartes matter?
Okay, like Nishida or Confucius, they have clear point to influence people. What's the Descartes point?
Wait. What is the clear point of Nishida?
Absolute nothingness. Okay, absolute nothingness.
Yeah, but why?
Why? Because this is actually everybody cannot recognize. Just special, mental spirits existing. So he just pointing out, like a kind of lost is nothing itself. Okay, nothing itself is very important.
But nothingness means basically that you are not. Your thoughts are completely not with anything around you, right? Absolute nothingness means that you are one with yourself, and your thoughts are not.
Okay, absolute nothingness means this is just lost. Simply saying lost mind.
Right.
Okay.
But that means when.
But this is
life.
Confucius, Buddhism, Shintoism, right. Everybody the same.
But why? So the question is, I think that actually the deeper question is why does Nishida say that we need to pursue absolute nothingness?
Okay, he's observing moon, right. And then moon as observing moon. Oh, so beautiful. He lost his mind. Okay, he forget the time goes by, right. And he's thinking, why is the kind of things happening, and goes and go. Then he can recognize special spiritual world actually existing in the world. But so this is his discovery of the spiritual world. Like for example, he himself, he tried to study, and then you try to concentration, but concentration is not normal concentration. You just more deeper. And then you forgot you yourself. This is nothingness, right? So you're going to train your heart and mind. It can be continue for 5 hours, 10 hours. Just lost your mind. This is nothingness. Okay, so he find out. So he can make cultivate, human being, making effort like doing that.
Right.
So he find out that sport is the same. Okay, cultivate. He give training, and then he will going to cultivate he himself. He lost he himself. He forget he himself.
So a flow. You get into a flow. You forget about yourself. Yes.
This is a big impact for people. But what is the Descartes? I don't understand.
Descartes.
Why he so much big impact for people?
I think there's something similar.
Right.
Nishida is saying that this is me and this is moon, this is subject and the moon object, but they're putting ourselves in the absolute nothingness. This bring this turn around 180 degree. What we are saying,
right?
There might be no subjective and objective.
Right.
It's going to be the one that through the perspective around this person and the moon.
Right. So through meditation, you can become one with the objects, right? Like the moon in this case.
Yeah. So we can deny, or we can throw away some common sense, or that there is subject and object. Then Descartes is what Descartes is saying is everything can be doubted.
Yes.
So putting the same in this situation, there is moon, there is myself. Then we can doubt: is it true? It might be not true that there is the moon object against the subject being myself.
Right.
So we can the situation can be the same that Nishida said. There is not anything about subject and object.
You're talking about same thing, Nishida theory?
Yeah.
Descartes?
So a parallel with Descartes.
Descartes?
Mm.
So that doubt, the similar in thinking that there shouldn't be anything, the precondition.
Right.
Precondition.
So Descartes actually he goes out and he tries to prove that God exists. By proving that he exists, he then goes on to prove that God exists and the world around us exists. So he gives a philosophical justification of the world around us. I think that Nishida is actually similar to Descartes, but only thing that you need to replace God with I. So I am God. If I am God, then being one, reaching absolute nothingness is actually reaching a divine state through study and through everything. So my conclusion is that there is a clear parallel between Nishida and Descartes. Is that they are trying to find God in nothingness, or in reaching a higher state in finding God or finding yourself.
Why he just influenced so many people? What is the point? Not only God.
Well, he proves that he gives a proof that God exists, but that there is something wrong with the proof.
Yeah, but you said the proof of God. This is just the improvement.
No, basically, he gives an answer. First of all, he gives an answer to the question: do we exist? Yes or no? So, are we living in the Truman Show, or are we actually living in the real world? So, according to Descartes, he says, okay, well, we do not live in the Truman Show because actually we exist. The fact that we are thinking proves that we exist.
So how was
but there is a reality.
How was the world like in his time, the Descartes thought?
Sorry, what kind of world?
Yeah, like society.
Okay. So basically, he goes to I don't know exactly how he did it and how he came to that conclusion, but based on the premise that we have thoughts and therefore we exist, he starts to put the apples back into the basket, as it said in this video, and then he draws from that the world around us more or less exists. So that we have reason to doubt, but because we know that we exist, we can be certain that God exists and the world around us as we observe it is not just a figment of our imagination, but it actually does exist. So he tries to take away the internal doubt, the skepticism, by through his eureka moment, his I found it moment, that I exist.
Yeah, on this.
So it's a very fundamental question.
On network, he proved God exists.
Right.
1, 2, 3. But I read it, but I don't understand this proof of the God exists.
I didn't read it actually.
I read it, no, but I don't understand. But at that time, how come they agree the God existed? But I don't understand what's the differentiation of the Descartes thinking. How much so many people influenced him? A lot. Tremendous people they influenced very much, but I don't understand. What is the difference?
Well, I think there is one important thing, that his conclusion is very important. Like how he does it is important, but what's even more important is that his conclusion, because he has this kind of irrefutable proof that he exists because he has these thoughts. That's what everybody can identify. Now he links that to the conclusion that God exists, and there's a lot.
This is the point.
But there's a lot of vested.
You said God exists, but how are you going to improve it?
Well,
how are you going to prove it?
So he proves it through deduction, abduction, and induction. Well, not
this
deduction,
is what I don't understand. How did he do that?
I didn't follow that through. I didn't read everything that
but
was.
He persuaded many people, right?
Well, I don't know whether he persuaded many people or many people liked the conclusion that God exists.
No, not few people, many people.
Right. So they liked the conclusion.
Descartes era, almost everybody persuaded.
Yes, of course.
How did that?
Because this was the time when the church was super powerful and everybody believed in God and in Christianity.
Okay, for example, Zen I understand, Buddhists understand, Shinto understand, Confucius understand, but Descartes I don't understand.
Well, you're not the only one who doubts him, because later on we will see a video of Nietzsche.
This video is not persuasive for me. Apple I understand, but why? What is this?
No, this video goes out to show that I exist, not that God exists. But his later conclusion is based on that God exists. But there is a later video. Do you want to see it? Okay. Well, we need to look for it.
Japanese.
It's Japanese.
What is Descartes? No, not Descartes. God crash course?
Proof.
Crash course, not crash course?
Crash course, maybe. Is it the same? Ah! Yes!
Argument for God.
Okay. Okay, so I haven't seen this one myself. Shall we start it, or would you like a coffee, Jonas?
Yeah, just take a break. Okay, break first.
Okay, I'm gonna buy coffee for us. Oh, there's somebody ask whether you like her photo.
Huh? Photo what?
Here.
What is this?
I don't know.
Click it.
Click it.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. What is this?
I don't know. You got a chat request.
Oh, might be. Don't do that. Oh, here you go. This one. Here you go. It's first time see how this one.
Right. Uno-san sees this for the first time.
See this?
83 friends.
My wife get upset. Okay.
Yeah, you have to be careful because you will get all kinds of viruses if you look this. Okay, yeah, I'll be back in a sec. Uno-san, cold coffee or hot coffee?
Hot coffee.
Hot coffee?
Yeah, I was still sleeping.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Oh, so it's difficult. Maybe you can just have a look a little bit.
God.
I don't know.
まだプライム会員じゃないあな
I
た
think it's a pretty
月額たった
difficult,
400円で
difficult
話題作満
thing
載
to
の
prove
大小
that God exists. So I'm curious whether we can actually
Yeah, that's right.
follow him.
Crash Course Philosophy is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace. Share your passion with the world.
It's about time we had a serious talk about religion. The philosophy of religion is often confused with theology, which makes sense because they both take God and religion as their subjects. But theology starts with assuming that God exists.
これ一回ちょっと日本語で見た方がいいな。デカルト。デカルト、あれのデカルトは、どんなこれか。一回落とすんだよな、これ。